Hi everyone, this is John from JMB Education. Today we have a seminar, so I'm going to go ahead and start. Um, all right, so let's start. I'm going to utilize lots of screen sharing, so let me just do that right now. All right. Um, okay. All right, I will start. Um, all right, here we go. All right, welcome. It's my seventh webinar today. So today's seminar, I'm going to mainly focus on John Locke essay competition. And the three must-have ingredients that you guys have to know for highly competitive final draft. Okay, so I'm going to mainly highlight three main traits that every John Locke paper needs to contain in order for it to be you know highly effective, quality, and recognized. Again, my seventh webinar today, and I'm John Lim, and I'm consulting director here in JMB Education. My job is to work with the consultants and also students together and make sure I give the right ideas. I oversee their work, make sure the students' work and ideas are properly and satisfactorily captured in their writings from start to end. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and begin. Um, As usual, I'm gonna start with the myth. Okay. So myth number one. Here it goes. For a John Locke paper, it is essential that we have as many sources as possible to effectively defend our arguments. Okay. So think about this statement on your own. So for any John Locke paper, it is very important that we have as many sources as possible in order to, defend our arguments effectively. Do you think is true or false? Okay. I'll get back to this one towards the end of our webinar to make sure, to let you know whether it's true or false. Okay. Myth number two, given a 2000 word max limitation for John Locke, it is still worthwhile to be closer to the word count limitation. Okay. So this second myth, do you guys think that given there is a 2000 word max limitation, do you think you still have to aim for, 2000 words or near? Or do you think the word count doesn't really matter for, competitive journal essay paper? Okay. Because we ask this, we have been asked this question a lot from students and parents. So what do you think? So just like the first myth, I'll get back to this one, okay? And myth number three, John Locke judges are mainly looking for essay submissions that are written mostly analytically and objectively. All right, analytically and objectively, those are two key words. So, out of many things, do you guys think that John Locke judges are mainly looking for essays that are objective and analytical? Okay. Also, I'm gonna get back to this one. Whether it's true or false at the end of our seminar. Okay, so keep this in your mind as I'm doing my webinar today. And yeah, so let's start with the next slide. Let's get right to it. This is John Locke. What you're seeing is the portrait of John Locke. Very typical image you will see on Google. He was an English philosopher, and he was also a physician, and he was also a writer and politician and others. Back then, the people had many hats, right? They had different titles, jobs. So John Locke was no exception. He was a man of Renaissance, right? So he was writer, he was philosopher at the same time. He was a politician, and not many people know about John Locke is that he was also a physician. Yeah, many hats. He was also known for father of liberalism. Okay, this is the highly philosophical the term basically means that refers to, the liberty and autonomy, inherent rights or innate. or inborn rights of the individual. Okay. So this philosopher John Locke, because John Locke essay competition is named after John Locke, right? So for John Locke, it was very important for him to that we preserved individual rights, individual freedom, and also their happiness. And I'm gonna talk more about this one, but just for now, just know that he's a father of liberalism. Yeah, he's more for the individuals as opposed to the governments or other establishments. Empiricism. This is also a philosophical slash psychological term. Refers to the notion that the knowledge or the knowledge we gain, it's mainly from environment. You know, it's something we are not born with. So every knowledge, everything that we have to know about the world, we can learn, through experience, um, using senses. The John Locke was the main proponent of empiricism. So he was an empiricist. And as you guys probably know, the René Descartes, he was on the other side, right? He was the rationalist. He was a proponent of the rationalism. He thinks that, as opposed to empiricism, he thinks that the everything that we should know about the world and everything else, it's born, it's from your reason. Um, yeah. So very two different main figures believing, each believing different ideas. So for John Locke, experience is very important. Empirical evidence, the observation through our senses, sight, um, you know, uh, the vision or the smelling, the different senses, right? And you because we obtain this knowledge and experience through the senses, right? So that's what's most important for him. And tabula rasa, it's a Latin word for the blank slate. He thinks that we humans are born with the blank page, blank slate. There's nothing written. There's no like innate knowledge. Every knowledge, everything that we have to learn, we have to learn using our senses. There's no innate knowledge for John Locke. For for Descartes, he thinks that the reason which we're born with, it's a primary vehicle for us to obtain knowledge. So he's different from, of course, John Locke. John Locke is all about the experience. Uh, so he thinks experience is very important for gaining knowledge and for go about navigating the world. The Two Treatises of Government, this is one of the famous works. This is very philosophical works written. Um, this is important text because in the book, he basically argues that individual rights have to be preserved. Their freedom also have to be preserved, and the government cannot take away their rights or freedom. So basically, the book defends that all of the human natural rights, the rights they were born with, and as well as the other like rights like voting rights, other privileges that need to be protected, against the government or establishments. Um, John Locke John Locke heavily influenced the U.S. Declaration of Independence and Constitution. Actually, he influenced Thomas Jefferson, who was the main person, you know, writing this independence and Declaration of Independence and Constitution. John Locke coined the terms here: life, liberty, estate. That's property. So he thinks that these three elements here, life, liberty, and property, are important to be preserved and protected. And Thomas Jefferson kind of used John Locke's ideas and kind of rephrased or reworded, so life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I'm sure you guys heard this term, especially the pursuit of happiness, right? There's a movie, right, made. Um, this pursuit of happiness, the title. John Locke, he was philosopher, politician. He was a somewhat psychologist as well, and his ideas heavily influenced the modern philosophy, economics, and of course politics. Yeah. John Locke essay competition. When you guys are preparing a John Locke essay competition, I'm gonna of course go over other elements as well, but just know that this competition is dedicated to John Locke, the English philosopher, and he's the person. He was known for he was a liberalist, right? He really cares about the individual rights as opposed to the uh, the systems or the government structure. Yeah. All right. I'm just gonna use their website, John Locke's website, to kind of explain, go over some of the basic logistical information here. All right. This is the John Locke page. Every year, this is an annual competition. You probably get prompts within a week. So we usually get prompts, new prompts every February or so. Yeah. And the deadline is end of June every year. Every year, the Journal's getting more submissions each year. More submission means more competitive, right? So that's why you guys probably here for. Um, John Locke has different categories. 7 different categories. There's philosophy, politics, and economics, history, law, psychology, theology. And for students who are 14 years old or younger, you guys have to choose a prompt from this category, junior prize. Essentially, these are just qualitatively, I don't think there's a big difference. Like here, do you benefit more from your own freedom of speech or from others? This could be discussed within, history or law or other categories. But they just kind of combine all of the prompts under this, category junior prize. So do not too focus on the category when you guys choosing a prompt, because you guys will be getting a new prompt sometime, within next week or so, like I said. But when you guys kind of browsing, exploring different options, you don't really have to be obsessed with the category itself. Yeah, because essentially you'll be writing a philosophically argumentative essay anyways, right? And prompts under law, prompts under history, they might seem different, but at the same time, the paper or essay itself, the end product, it needs to be the style that's not drastically different from category to category, in my opinion. All right, so there are 3 different options you can choose from each category. Um, so 3 prompts for philosophy and others. Probably you guys have interest in more than one category, maybe even more than like 2, right? Maybe 3 or 4. It's very likely that's the case. So like I said, I'm gonna talk more about this one in my later slides, but always go for the prompt that will give you more reasons, more compelling reasons to write about. Yeah. If you just like the topic and just start working on it, then you're probably stuck with the reasons. I like this prompt. I want to, make us, I want to make certain, arguments. I know what I want to say, but at the same time, it's hard to back up with your evidence or reasoning. So you're kind of going back and forth and you stop. You're kind of wasting your time. And maybe then you want to try a different prompt and you're kind of hesitant. So we don't want that to happen to you. So I'm just gonna say just straight to you that do not focus too much on category, like I said, but actually go for a prompt that will give you um, the quality, compelling reasons for either stance, yes, no, or neutral stance, basically. Yeah. So All right, so max 2,000 words, that's the max word count. It's not a lot of words, um, but since it's not a research paper, 2,000 words should be very interesting, and also it will give you enough space to work on and your arguments. Um, yeah, so that's kind of the basic information that you guys have to know about for John Locke before you guys start working on. If it's your second time or third time, then you guys know all the logistical information. So yeah, so that's John Locke. Back to my slide. All right, so slideshow. All right, so the title of my webinar, right? Three must-have ingredients for a highly competitive final draft, right? So what are the three ingredients? First one, argumentation. Yeah. Whether you're gonna choose a prompt from history, politics, or philosophy, your paper needs to have argumentation. Argumentation is the process of having arguments, process of making your arguments, your papers argumentative. So of course, argumentation, it, of course, which means it has to have arguments in the first place. No arguments, then your paper cannot be argumentative, right? So it's kind of the same thing by different wording, right? So argumentation. So secret number one, argumentation. Um, there are different terms that you might have to distinguish and fully understand what argument is, but just for the sake of the webinar, I'm just gonna introduce the differences between claims and argument. Okay. Um, so by understanding what claim is, you're in better position to understand what argument is. Because everyone knows what argument is, talking about argument, but I'm not really sure if that's the case. Especially my students, they're when they're being asked, what the argument is, what your argument is, it seems like they understand, but in writing, it doesn't seem clearly that that the students are fully understand this term. So claim, it's basically refers to the what part. So it's an arguable viewpoint or position you are making, so others would agree with you. Okay, it's basically a sentence that is arguable, that contains an arguable viewpoint or position, and ultimately you're going to make other people to like your position or viewpoint. So example here, students should use AI software for their homework. Okay, so the claim says students should use AI software for their homework. It's kind of persuasive tone, right? You're saying that students, they need to use AI when they're working on the homework. So it has a persuasive force, right? So, but why, right? Why they have to use AI? The why part is missing. The why part is basically it's what the argument is all about. So claim, basically it's arguable basically. So it can, you have to unless unless you have a good reason or evidence, it cannot be defended. So that's what the our claim is all about. Yeah. Argument is the white part, like I mentioned. It's the claim plus evidence and reasoning. Okay, so here, argument is basically the claim that is backed up with the evidence and reasoning. The evidence is empirical evidence, like objective evidence. Something is hard, science-based evidence and reasoning. So, example here, given many studies have proven that AI saves time and increases productivity results, students should use AI software for their homework. The latter part, this is the claim, right? We have used. And the former, this is the part that it contains the more evidential, the reasoning part, because many studies have proven that, AI can save time and increase the productivity. That's why students have to use AI software for their homework. It's one sentence, right? Just like a claim. But as you can see, the argument has it's evidence based, it's evidence oriented, plus reasoning, plus a claim. So all of these three elements together. Yeah. Without evidence and reasoning, you cannot persuade people to believe your idea. You cannot just say, you just cannot go out and say, you should use AI software for your homework. Yeah. Right? No one's gonna, and they're gonna ask why. Who are you, right? And that's why arguments, that's what differentiates from the argument. Argument needs to be um, back up with the evidence and reasoning. Good argument has a good evidence, more reliable, authentic evidence with the sound reasoning. Weak argument tends to have faulty evidence and weak reasoning. So you guys want to make sure it's solid reasoning and the reliable, authentic evidence. That's what makes your arguments more quality. Yeah. You don't want to write claims for and mistake, claims for arguments. Some students have, they think they're doing arguments, but at the end they're just doing claims. Yeah. All right. So for John Locke, what you want is argument, right? So just give you a little more information about argument. From philosophical standpoint, argument is premises plus conclusion, basically. Okay. It's a logical structure. So all the sentences, they have to be there for a reason. And the one sentence to the list of the next one, and all in all, they all make sense. They have to be logical and coherent. Um, because it's logical, it makes sense. And of course, it's going to persuade people at the end. So one argument tends to contain more than one premise. Yeah, so usually two or more. And usually there's always one conclusion for one argument. So for the simplicity, you guys can just, treat one argument. An argument is having, many premises plus one conclusion. Example here, premise one, all men are mortal. Okay. So we all die, right? We are not invincible. So someday we all die, we are mortal. That's premise one. And premise two, Socrates is a man. Socrates is a, famous, he's a Greek philosopher, father of philosopher, and he's a man, right? He's a human being. And conclusion. So oftentimes we have keywords like thus, therefore, consequently, Socrates is immortal. Okay. So there's two premises and there's one conclusion, and this conclusion is followed by these two premises. Yeah. So all men are mortal because Socrates is a man, Socrates is immortal. Yeah. So make sure the conclusion has to follow from the premises for it to be logically sound. And yeah, if the premises are not good, but somehow conclusion follows from the premises, you can say it's valid. And if the premises themselves are good or true, in this case, it's true, right? We all die, Socrates is a man. In this case, we can say this argument is sound because conclusion follows from two premises in this case, and also premises themselves are true. So it's sound argument. We want aim for sound arguments, not just valid arguments. But sometimes it's hard to prove premises are true. So at least we're aiming for valid argument for 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 the paper. Yeah. In essence, John Locke paper is no different from philosophical essay. Yeah. It contains the right arguments, um, and of course, the reasoning, the logic behind the arguments. All right, that's the first secret, argumentation. Whether you want to aim for history prompt, junior prize prompt, or um, politics prompt, your essay needs to have arguments. Without arguments, your paper, risk, of having low quality, essay. You want to avoid claims. You want to aim for arguments. Okay. All right. So, second premise for highly comparative essay is a subjectivity. All right. Subjectivity is it's as opposed to objectivity. It's all about your thoughts, your perspective, right? Your your position, your perspective, your the standpoint, basically. So here, I strongly argue that blah blah blah, or it is my firm belief that blah blah blah. It's totally fine if you use these phrases, like these phrases in John Locke essay. Okay. So I argue, I believe, I confidently argue, or I state. All of these phrases refer to that, subjectivity, right? You're the it's like research papers. They don't want the authors to have this sort of phrases, because they want more objective tone, right? But for John Locke, it's totally okay. You don't have to, but it's okay if you do. Yeah, because John Locke, like I said, it's a highly philosophy essay or paper. So philosophy is all about the you being subjective, having subjective standpoint, and so that's totally fine. Argument based, back up with the evidence and reasoning. So there are three words to touch base here. So we have argument and we have evidence and reasoning, right? So essentially you want your essay, journal essay, to have mainly argument based, argument oriented, not fact oriented. Okay, you're argument oriented, and it needs to be backed up or strengthened by evidence and reasoning. Evidence, um, it you can obtain different articles, books, and journals for John Locke, um, like any other research paper. But then at the same time, type of evidence, what you're aiming for is the journals, um, like philosophical journals, and yeah. Where some students they prefer to include the personal experience as an example. That's actually okay with John Locke if appropriately used. Yeah. So persuasion. That's also another keyword for the second secret here, subjectivity. Your job is to persuade the readers to agree with your position, right? That's essentially what you're doing for a John Locke paper. Just like debate, you're you have your argument, whether you agree or disagree or maybe maintain a neutral stance. But whichever stance you're making, ultimately your job as an author or writer is that you want to make sure the readers like your argument and also agree with your argument. That's an act of persuasion, right? So that's why subjectivity is a key here. Yeah, without your paper being subjective, not subjective, it's hard to persuade people. You want to put your argument in your perspective, and that's where how persuasion, the force of persuasion, stems from. All right. So second secret is a subjectivity. Make sure your paper, the style, tone needs to be very subjective. And like I said, it's okay for you to explicitly state like, I strongly argue, I believe, and yeah, it's okay to do this. Third one, It's a creativity. Okay. So first one was argumentation, right? So whichever prompt you decide to go about doing, make sure your paper needs to have sound arguments. No arguments, no quality for John Locke. Yeah, not John Locke, but actually for other things like debates as well, right? So John Locke is no different from philosophy paper or debate essentially. So you have to have arguments. Second secret is subjectivity. Make sure the tone and the style it's subjective. It's contextualized and presented, discussed from your perspective. The language, like I strongly argue, it's my firm belief. It's totally okay. Yeah, because the readers already expect that those kind of language, anyways, right? The third one, creativity. Um, cues and logic. That's what uh, That's what the term that I came up with. Hues means color, right? Arts, and logic means science, or um, it's it's uh it's the hard part, the permanent, right? Something that's fixed, that's not changeable, and everyone agrees with it, right? That's universally confirmed truth, fact, and like science. Hues, um, as opposed to logic, hues is all about colors, arts, subjectivity, and yeah, logic is subjectivity, right? Those are two different opposing words. So in a paper, any paper, essay, especially philosophy essays, you want to make sure have these two components, in your essay. Both make sure your paper is logical. I already emphasized, right, that you have to have arguments. With arguments, we have to have logic and reasoning. So this all like objectivity part. So you want your essay to be logical at the same time colorful. Colorful means your style. It's your color. So you have to have these two elements in your in your paper for readers to be engaging and at the same time um, persuaded by your arguments basically. Yeah. Oftentimes some papers just have a good logic with not so interesting, facts, or it can be boring to read. It's not just it's good, but it's just not interesting to, keep reading. Yeah. Like encyclopedia. Yeah. You want your paper to be logical at the same time engaging and, attractive, right? That attractive part, it's coming from this hues. Yeah. And it's again going back to the second secret, subjectivity. Yeah. In order for your paper to be creative, you have to make sure you have to, write the paper from subjective standpoint perspective because your job is to make sure your paper it's the one that you like. So the cues, this part, it's the one that makes your paper your paper basically. Yeah. So that's creativity. Logic is important. Make sure when the readers are reading your paper, make sure they follow you. They don't question why, this here, that here, but rather make sure your paper, is read very smoothly, flawlessly, and no questions. And logic is the one that's responsive for it. Um, what makes the readers keep wanting to read your paper? It's the hues. Yeah. You don't want your paper to be boring. You want your paper to be attractive and appealing, right? So, so that's what why hues are important and creativity. It's the main engine of the hues. Yeah. So I have an example from one of our students. We help the students by providing outline before students work on their paper. After we brainstorm, we discuss. There are many different steps before we start. The students start working on their paper, but one of the steps is the outline, something that we help students prepare with. So I'm going to just briefly use this outline to share what sort of creativity we're looking for in John Locke. Okay, so I'm just gonna click this one here, and all right. So this prompt was from 3 years ago, not last year, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, one of the theology or philosophy, prompts here. So it says, if you cannot persuade your intelligent, sympathetic friends to embrace your religious belief system, do you have enough reason to believe what you believe? Yeah, let's say you're a Christian and your friends or family members, they don't understand why you're Christian. So, but you're trying, hard to persuade, them, there are many good things being a Christian, right? But they're not still convinced. They keep saying, but still, you don't have to be Christian to be ethical or moral, right? If that's the case, do you still have, good reason to be a Christian? That's kind of the prompt. Okay. So for this prompt, there could be yes, no, or neutral, right? Again, John Locke is they're known for asking these very interesting questions, or childish questions, prompts, They don't really expect any particular answers. It's open-ended questions. So you can choose yes, no, or neutral. Yeah. Yes or but. Yeah. Question or answer. So for this one, um we kind of came up with the idea, to approach. We kind of came up with these two characters, Nietzsche and the Gandhi, as an example. So as you know, Nietzsche is the one. He's an atheist, right? He doesn't believe in God, the existence of God. He's an atheist. Gandhi, it's the opposite, right? He's a very devout, religious guy, right? So we kind of we use these two figures to go about making the argument. So here we say, imagine two theological extremes. One is an atheist intent on killing God to autonomously assume responsibility for himself, while another is an esoteric Hindu devoted to the search for absolute truth via theodicy. These are Friedrich Nietzsche and Mahatma Gandhi. Both of their beliefs radically challenge my own, assuming this author is a Christian. And then after we kind of introduce your topic, this is your kind of hook, right? Forever. Okay. First couple sentences are very important. You guys probably learn from school, right? Teachers, because the readers, they read this and you want to make sure they keep reading your essay paper. Yeah. So it's kind of a hook. And then juxtaposition of devout atheism or religiosity introduces the ontological problem of faith and conversion, where converting others is seen as a reflection of one's absolute faith. If neither Nietzsche or Gandhi converts to my religion, Christianity, is my faith still valid? Okay, you're kind of asking questions to readers. If this is the case, can I still hold my belief, religious belief? You're questioning. And as the next component here address the main points you will make in your essay, and then the thesis. As you guys know, this is the one main argument that you're going to be defending throughout your paper. And thesis always had to be at the end of the introduction. So when you see thesis, you will know that this is the end of the introduction. And what follows is the starting of the body paragraph. So thesis, we're saying, even if neither Nietzsche or Gandhi embraces Christianity, my faith still holds. As an interpretive value system relying on reason and self-predicated truth, faith is not a reflection of the convictions of those around us. So we're kind of addressing this prompt in the form of argument. Yeah. This is still one sentence. You want your thesis to be one sentence. Yeah. You just want the one period at the end. That's what this is for. Sometimes this have more than one sentence, but we still, encouraging our students to just stick with the one sentence thesis. All right. So that's kind of how you want to go about. This is one example, one way to go about, you know, instilling, creativity in your essay. Given the prompt here, it's okay to be clever. It's okay to be creative. And thought experiment, which is kind of it's typical, in the philosophy, uh, the world. So thought experiment, bring different examples, even fictional ones. Yeah, that's totally fine with the John Locke. Although John Locke, in essence, you want your essay to be logical, but doesn't mean that have you don't have to you don't have to that be that your paper is boring. You know, yeah. So that's what I meant by creativity. You still want to preserve the logic part, but also at the same time, you can make your essay to be more appealing and stand out from 60,000 submissions or so, because without creativity, even if the logic, holds, then if the readers think that it's boring, then it's hard to be liked, or persuaded. Because given so many submissions, you want your essay to stand out. And like I said, there's three elements that I went over today: um, argumentation and the subjectivity, and the lastly creativity. These are the most important elements for your journal essay if you want to make it to a finalist or beyond. Yeah. So you can have one of these, like just arguments. Maybe it's still fairly good. If you just have a creativity, then it's just creative fiction, right? It's just a fiction writing. It's not really a philosophical or argumentative essay. So it's not good just having creativity. Just having subjectivity also not good, right? So you want to make sure at minimum you have all of these three together in order for your paper have a good chance of getting past the finalist, the level. All right. So going back to what I discussed today, um, when you're preparing John Locke, let me use this here page. Yeah, so like I said, you guys will get new prompts within the next week or so. The prompts are not going to be drastically different from previous years. It's just different prompts. But what they're asking is pretty much silly, right? So there's one question here, prompt. Is Vladimir Putin a war criminal? Yeah. It's a open-ended, right? And there's no right or wrong answer. And what is self-deceit? Is objectivity all in the mind? So these questions, you can pretty much do whatever you want with it, right? But it's okay to do whatever you want with it, but make sure you have three components like I mentioned. Your essay at the end has to contain arguments, sound arguments, and make sure you write your arguments and provide everything in evidence from your standpoint. Um, that's subjective. It's philosophical essay, argumentative essay. They're all subjective. Um, and lastly is creativity. Make sure your paper is attractive and appealing so that the readers want to keep reading your essay. Yeah, we're all humans, right? So we love to read, fun books, papers, essays. So make sure your paper has the fun part, or at least something that they make sure the readers know that it's your paper. So that subjective is very important. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the myth that I talked about in the very beginning of our webinar. So I'm gonna go back, revisit those myth here. Myth one, for a John Locke paper, it is essential that we have as many sources as possible to effectively defend our arguments. Wrong. Um, Given 2,000 word essay, ideally you want to have sources around 15 sources or less. less the better. Because if you have a lot of sources, which means you have to analyze those sources, right? Or paraphrase. Because let's say you have 30, 40 sources, then you have them, in your paper, essay, and there's in-text citations, right? Everything cited. Um, After citing each source or excerpt or quote, you have to analyze. That takes up time, right? I mean, the space. That's going to eat up your word count. So, like I said, John Locke is all about arguments. Spend more time and more space on the arguments rather than collecting just sheer number of sources. As long as you have about 15 or so sources, your paper, if it's arguments, and like I said, if your paper contains the three elements like arguments, it's subjective and creative, then your paper is good quality wise. Yeah. So like I said, do not obsess with the number of sources. 15 or less is fine. A lot of highly comparative, essays, submissions, they have contain less than 10 sources. Your job is to effectively defend your arguments. You don't need to have many sources to effectively defend your arguments for your information. Second myth, wrong again. This one, same, just like the first myth, it's not right. Um, Given 2000 word max limitation, it's not worthwhile to be closer. Yeah, word count, quantity matters, but as long as you write more than 1300 words, I believe, 1300 words or 1400 words, you should be fine. Your paper doesn't have to be 1999 words or 2000 words to be exact. Yeah, yeah. So always aim for quality. Um, but because if you aim for quantity, then it's likely that you're going to repeat the same things over and over. Maybe rephrasing, rewording, right? So, all right, third myth, wrong as well. So John Locke judges are not mainly looking for essay submissions that are written mostly analytically or objectively. What they're looking for are the submissions that are written argumentatively and subjectively. Yeah. Analytically, basically by analysis, I mean by analyzing, by the term analysis, you're basically breaking into different parts, right? And kind of evaluate, whether this is case or not. So it's evaluative, right? Not argumentative. You're not really creating something new. You're just going back and reevaluate what's already out there. So that's what if John Locke, were a history paper, like a Concord review, then your paper needs to be analytical. Yeah. Because you're not doing any arguments for John Locke. I mean for Concord. That's not your job. For Concord, for your information, your job is to inform and present the facts in a chronological order. Make sure you let the readers know this happened, that happened. So it's more analytical. And you want your paper to be written objectively for Concord. For John Locke, it's the opposite. You want your paper to be subjectively written. You're the one who's actually making arguments. So it has to be subjective if it was written correctly. So you don't need to do a lot of analysis. Your job is to mainly argue, defending your arguments. That's what you're doing. John Locke, you're persuading the readers. Concord, you're not. You're just analyzing. Yeah, that's the main difference. And some students are more comfortable, familiar with analytical essay, or descriptive essays. Yeah, but John Locke is argumentative. You're not informing. You're not presenting facts. You're essentially arguing all the time, just like debate. Good arguments, as you know, have to be backed up with the reasoning and evidence. So that's what you're doing for John Locke. Okay. So going back to the prompts here, like I said, you'll get your new prompts sometime soon. And make sure when you're work on any prompt from any category, make sure be mindful that the uh, come up with the or choose the prompt that's most arguable and the one that will give you most quality evidence and reasons behind. Let's say you like this prompt, but when you don't have the enough reasons, compelling reasons, then stop working on that one and choose the other prompt. Yeah. If you're just stubbornly stick to it, and then at the end you might be able to produce 2,000 words, but then it's likely that without sound reasoning and the good evidence, it's not going to be quality essay. So if you want, of course, you guys all want what's, the quality essays, right, at the end, right? So if that's the case, then choose the one that will give you quality sources and the sound reasoning. Yeah. So yeah, just keep that in mind as you guys preparing to receive the prompts. And yeah, so good luck with your John Locke essay, working on them, and thank you for your time and take care. Bye bye.